Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, June 15, 2020. We're here for the purpose of the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. Before I ask everyone to rise and say the pledge, I need to let you know that we are meeting electronically because of the COVID situation. Actually, if we had our full corporate authority, we would be over the gathering of 10 that the governor has determined that we can have. So we're definitely having another meeting via video. And before I ask for Clerk Tamer to call the roll, I am going to double check and make sure, as required, that everybody not only can hear me, but has the option of participating. So I'm going to go around the horn here. Alderman Dunn, I need you to, yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Brennan.
I can hear you.
Alderman Doyle.
I can hear you.
Alderman Pelosi.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
Alderman Toledo.
I can hear you.
Alderman Levin.
I hear you.
Alderman Kennedy.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Park.
I can hear you.
Is Mike Kopp public comment and Norm Leader?
Yes.
I can hear you.
There you go. Okay. Two birds with one stone. And then I've got YouTube Live, which I think is just people listening, right? So we're good to go? Okay, it sounds like everybody can participate. Let's have a roll call.
Leader,
Here.
Dunn,
Here.
Bram, absent, Hawomsky, here, Toledo,
Here.
Park,
Here.
Levin,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
Honquist, absent, Brennan,
Here.
Mulliner,
Here.
Deuter,
Here.
10 present, 2 absent, 2 vacancies.
10 present, we have a quorum. I will now ask all to rise. Oh, there you go. Some people heard me. 10 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. I'm asking everyone to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, on with the meeting. Agenda item 3.1, written communications. What happened to our audience? Does anybody in the audience have any written communications they wish to submit? Mike Kopp, anybody in your neck of the woods with written communications?
No, they're just verbal at this point.
Okay. Seeing no one indicating written communications available, we'll now move on to public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody to address the council on any item they so choose. We ask that out of respect for work that we have to get done this evening and respect for others who may want to speak, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you go over 3 minutes, we'll give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up. When you're called on, whether it's in person or electronically, we ask that you identify yourself. Address is optional. And I know that we allow for public comment here in City Hall. We also allow for people to call in remotely if they so choose. And, we're running a little bit late today, specifically because of technological issues. So what I'm going to do is ask that we move forward with the folks, if anybody is online, so that while we have them, let's give them the opportunity to speak. I don't want to run into a technological issue with any of those folks. So we are going to go to, it's my understanding we have 1, maybe 2 people available electronically, online, that have phoned in. And I'm going to turn it over to Clerk Tamer.
Edgar Pal,
Good evening. This is Andrew Powell speaking. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Thank you. Good evening. First of all, I would like to thank Mayor Morley for his letter to the Elmhurst community on June 5th concerning the death of George Floyd. Mr. Floyd's murder at the hands of a police officer is absolutely unacceptable. Since then, we have seen a movement build over several weeks, in addition to calls for everyone to engage in peaceful political action to redress anti-Black racism. I hope that the City Council is listening to these voices. But if you look at the history of this city and the policies that it has enacted, what hope do we have? What hope do people of color in Elmhurst have? There are people calling for Elmhurst to have more Black-owned businesses and businesses owned by people of color in general. It seems like a fine idea, one that everyone would support, until you look at the way the Virgil family was treated. In that incident, there were 2 children simply wanting to sell vegetables in what was akin to an ordinary child's lemonade stand. But of course, the children's experience with their vegetable stand was far from ordinary. Their parents were sued through the city's administrative process, their property rights challenged in court, and their integrity impugned throughout years of public meetings and contentious debate. These children, Black children, are the future of Elmhurst, part of the multicultural fabric of society that is at risk of being torn apart by national events. These children observe city council meetings and the ensuing disappointment with their own eyes. What hope do they have for their elected government? Will they or other African American children want to open a business in Elmhurst when they grow up? What will you do to be a source of hope to people of color? These are trying times, but the City Council has shown a remarkable ability to adapt. To its credit, amidst the closures caused by COVID-19, the city has taken a number of steps to help restaurants cope with the pandemic. Outdoor dining is allowed now. Restaurants can serve customers on parking spaces and sidewalks, but the city has also allowed restaurants to erect tents over these tables. Tents with temporary use permits, plastic membrane structures, much like the one that Mr. and Mrs. Virgil could not have in their backyard. Why is the city so eager to allow membrane structures for one group of constituents while denying the same privilege to another? Time and again, the Virgil family and their supporters have shown instances of other membrane structures allowed in Elmhurst. Those residents, those businesses, those institutions may have been violating the law, but they were never dragged through a process as difficult as what the Virgil family had to go through. And it shows nothing more than an inherent bias and in the way that the city serves the community. I hope that the City Council will reconsider this issue, especially amidst the broader conversation that we are having throughout this nation. Thank you. That ends my comment.
Okay. Clerk Tamer, do we have anybody else who is phoned in?
Is Kathleen Sullivan on the line?
No, she did not join.
So, Mr. Cobb, she indicated that she wanted to join. Is that correct?
Earlier today, yes.
Okay, so we will go with, I think we have some folks in-house, and we'll see if in that time, while public comment is still open, maybe she'll call in. Raise your hand or wave. Who would know? Would Mike, Mr. Cobb, would you know if she calls in? Or would Jackie know, or would we not know?
I will know if someone else gets on this phone. When we're done with the live people, I will ask if anybody else on the phone wants to do public comment.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you. Clerk Tamer, I know we had some folks in person.
Jake Hill?
Oh, okay. Greetings, City Council. Good, you can hear me. I'm here today to talk to you as a member of North Growl Woods, and I'm talking about the issue of significant and chronic flooding we've had in our neighborhood historically and especially recently. Because of this flooding that's been ongoing, and we have been in contact with the officials and the city engineer, we're in the process of organizing, contacting additional officials such as the Public Works Committee and the City Council. Being inclusive, we're setting up communications such as websites and distributing an in-process petition. We have a task force and a local betterment association, and we are figuring out ways to collaborate and assist the city and district, that'd be District 205, with our own research and testimonials. What we're asking for is ongoing public information sessions and communication to keep Growl Woods neighborhood abreast of plans and developments. By the way, that neighborhood is River Glen, Shady, and Ferndale Roads, bound to the south by North Avenue, Emerson to the north, on west to the east side, and 83 to the west side. So flooding in the woods is a critical issue which if left unaddressed will only worsen with the rising trend in extreme precipitation events. With the threat to property values and resident safety, it is incumbent for the city and district to address our needs proactively, especially based on the public December 16, 2019 announcement that the city and the district are working together with an intergovernmental agreement. School property also directly impacts the woods, and we plan on attending the school board meeting tomorrow as well and delivering a similar message. But the reason there's urgency right now, and it's especially critical, is that there is ongoing construction work at Emerson, which may be changed depending upon input that the neighborhood can give, that the city might be able to give, and other information which we might bring to the table, which might change some of the ongoing construction work that District 205 is doing at Emerson and provides us with an opportunity. One last thing I'd like to say is that sometimes historically solutions to flooding might be centered around a special assessment. In this case, we believe it's not feasible because we have a lot of retirees and fixed income residents, as well as new younger residents who cannot afford these levies or assessments. Also, asking residents who are on higher grades or are unaffected by flooding to cover these costs might not be reasonable. And based upon the recent stormwater improvement project that was authorized for $4.73 million this spring, we believe that it's incumbent upon the city to provide some sort of funding and resolution to help address this flooding in the Growl Woods area comprehensively, to help all of our neighbors. And we're open to multiple solutions, buying certain lots and using them as flood mitigation areas. We're open to any solution, but we do agree that something needs to be done, and we're organizing to that purpose. Finally, we would ask that our project be represented formally on the Elmhurst Stormwater Plan projects page. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Clerk Tamer?
Todd Benson.
Good evening, Todd Benson, 391 North River Glen in Elmhurst. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, aldermen, city staff, and my fellow neighbors. First, I'd like to put on the hat at the York and Villette Business Association and the Elmhurst Farmers Market. I want to thank the city for the continued confidence in the group that runs the Elmhurst Farmers Market. We appreciate the city helping us, especially this year, to be prepared to have a great market. It's Wednesday mornings from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. and on Villette, just east of York Road. And I look forward to having a chance to continue to see our neighbors come on out. So far, the market has been extremely well attended, safe, and a good place to visit on Wednesday mornings. Second comment for Spring Road and Spring Road Business Association. In a meeting last week, we haven't yet abandoned hopes for Summer of Music at the gazebo for our citizens and the neighbors to come out, and even hopes for, if not in September, possibly October, for a Fall Fest for Spring Road Day. And finally, I'm glad to run into my neighbors here in the woods, in the Growl Woods tonight. After listening to Jake, and I also see Emily here, I'm a strong supporter of the community effort in the woods to help the city better understand the concerns of the neighbors, and also to work with the city to continue to improve. Just like each of you, like there are many different parts of Elmhurst, and if we can consider each neighborhood like a child, I know you folks have lots of children up on the dais, and each of your children are important. I hope you'll consider the North Growl Woods as a very important child, and a child that needs your attention when it rains. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City.
Clerk Tamer, anyone else?
Emily Moran. Good evening. My name is Emily Moran. I've lived at 370 North Ferndale in North Growl Woods subdivision for about 18 years. My husband and I have raised 3 children there and have watched the neighborhood blossom with new families and many young children. It's gotten a lot noisier. I'm here today with Jake Hill as co-leaders of the newly formed North Growl Woods Flooding Task Force. It's a group of residents that formed just 2 weeks ago for several reasons. We very recently learned that the overland flooding from West Avenue that we've been experiencing for roughly 8 years on Ferndale was also reaching and impacting homes behind us on Shady Lane and River Glen. Other areas of our neighborhood are impacted by stormwaters from North Avenue and possibly from the forest preserve areas north and west of our neighborhood. We aim to work with both the school district and the city to mitigate the surge of stormwater that impacts houses on all 3 of these streets. Another reason for forming our task force was to understand how Emerson's detention pond project may impact us. Last fall, I started a conversation with District 205 regarding the surge of stormwater that comes from West Avenue and travels over Emerson's Front Circle Drive to Ferndale Avenue. We've asked Public Works to coordinate a meeting with District 205 to help answer some of our questions and concerns about how their efforts may be helping with our south side flooding. The south side of Emerson, that is. One major concern for the neighborhood is that Emerson's detention pond drains into our neighborhood storm sewer. We do realize that it is built to be a slow drain, but our neighborhood does not have a comprehensive stormwater system. There are a series of drains and pipes that lead to open culverts, streets, and apparently streams west of River Glen along Route 83. This type of system doesn't seem like it was built for the volume of water that our low-lying neighborhood gets, as well as Emerson's volume of water. It's not clear to us where this piecemeal stormwater's final outlet is in our neighborhood. We would like some clarification on that matter. And why would Emerson's drains and now a substantial detention pond be draining into this piecemeal neighborhood system that has a history of flooding? The leadership of the task force has been in contact with Public Works engineers. Last Monday, some of our neighbors who were impacted by flooding presented their testimony to the Public Works Committee. We definitely felt as though we were heard by Kent Johnson, Mayor Morley, and the rest of the committee, and we thank you for that. We've been communicating with our aldermen as well in hopes of meeting with them about our issues and activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jason Judowitz. I'm saying that last name wrong.
Jason Judicky. I'm a resident at
Please,
381
one
North.
sec, please say it again. You weren't in front of the microphone when you started. Could you state your name, please?
Judicky. Last name Judicky, first name Jason. I live at 381 North Ferndale. I'm also part of the North Growl Woods community. Jake and Emily have done a fantastic job addressing the concerns of the community, and I'm here simply in support of their efforts. I have no further commentary at this time, and I appreciate their efforts and appreciate the city's support. Thank you very much.
That's all I have.
City Manager, I'm sorry, Mr. Kopp, anyone else in there for public comment?
There's no one else live here. Is there anyone else on the call who would like to do public comment? No response.
Didn't hear from Ms. Sullivan?
No.
Okay. That having been said, we will close public forum for the evening. On to agenda item 5.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Are you doing the public comment?
Yes, my name is Steve Dreyer. I also am part of the North Growl Woods neighborhood. I live on River Glen and just wanted to echo the same comments of supporting Jake and Emily with getting a better understanding of our water management system that flows through the 3 streets of Shady, River Glen, and Ferndale.
Can you spell your last name, please?
Dreyer, Dreher.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kopp, anyone else?
No.
Last call for anybody who has dialed in. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 5, announcements. Any announcements from the dais? City manager, anybody have their hand up? Okay, on to consent agenda, agenda item 6. At this time, is there any item on the consent agenda any alderman wishes to have pulled to provide comment or vote no? Alderman Levin.
6.13, please.
Okay, 6.13. Anyone else? Alderman Levin.
6.18.
6.13, 6.18. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6.13 and 6.18. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Deuter. Clerk Tamer.
Leader.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Bram. Absent. Palumsky. Aye. Toludo.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Conquest absent. Brennan.
Aye.
Mulliner. Deuter.
Aye.
10 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent, 2 vacancies.
10 ayes, motion carries. Consent agenda minus items 6.13 and 6.18 is approved. On to agenda item 6.13. This is an ordinance. I would ask Clerk Tamer to read the ordinance.
An ordinance temporarily amending regulation of liquor licenses and collection of fees in the city of Elmhurst, DuPage, and Cook Counties, Illinois.
Okay, to put this before council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the ordinance as read. Motion by Alderman Lumsky, second by Alderman Levin.
Thank you, Mayor. I will defer to Alderman Levin. He pulled this report.
Alderman Levin, you pulled the report. Floor is
Thank you,
yours.
Mayor. I would like to start by making a motion to amend Section 5 of the report in line 3 and line 7 to state that before June 30th, 2020 may apply for a 2-month credit. And then similarly in the 6th line, I believe it is, amount of 1/6 of the annual liquor license fee. The intent being to offer simply that, a 2-month credit instead of a 1-month credit.
Okay, we have a motion to amend, and that is portions of section 5 where it lists 1 month. We'll move that. The motion is to move it to 2 months, and a couple lines down where it says 1/12, it's 1/6. Do I have a second for that motion? Alderman Mulliner. I'm going to ask Alderman Levin, who's the mover on this amendment. I haven't had a chance to read this entire ordinance. Is that the only places we need to worry about?
I believe so.
Okay. All right. Council understand the intention. Motion is to amend. Basically, this ordinance right now allows for a application of up to a 1-month credit. Alderman Levin has made a motion, seconded by Alderman Mulliner, which increases that to a 2-month credit. Discussion. Alderman Levin, you can go to the microphone. I'll leave it with you.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council knows, this set of liquor license relief came before the committee. At the time it was presented, we considered whether it would be 0 months, 1 month, or 2 months. It was proposed as 1 month when it came before the council in report form. Alderman Mulliner moved to change it, as I am asking tonight, to 2 months. And as I spoke at that time, the committee had evaluated it, and as I said, I didn't feel it was particularly clear that it should be one or the other. I was in favor of 1 month. Subsequently, I was approached by a number of restaurant owners who had discussion with staff and other officials, and they had an expectation that something greater would happen, and they felt that they had not been allowed to participate, that the decision was made without their knowledge. And as I said to at least one restaurant owner in particular, we publish an agenda, staff does contact them. None of the committee members heard from any of the restaurant owners. They didn't submit any comments, they didn't come to the meeting, so we thought we had presented a pretty good package of relief through the various parts of this ordinance that's before us tonight. But in talking to some of the restaurant owners, it became I was more persuaded for 2 months because, as they point out, they've had some hard times. They don't know that really it's going to be a 1 or 2 month process. Fortunately, they can be outside right now, but it doesn't mean that when it's 90 degrees out, that it'll be well attended in their establishments, et cetera. And I understand that they're struggling, as are other businesses, but in this case, this is a fee that we're asking the restaurant owners to pay at a time when they can't use the license. I do want to note that after I approached city manager and told him of my thinking with respect to a possible motion to change this ordinance, I was not yet aware of social media by certain restaurant owners north of the tracks who were suggesting that our city council was not business friendly. And I was kind of taken aback because I think we are criticized frequently by residents sometimes from being too business friendly. It was also, I think we were called out, the committee members, for not being aware of a petition that was on social media, but if it's never presented to us, we wouldn't know it was there. But notwithstanding those comments, this is, I believe, a proper thing to do, to go with the 2 months. And based on that, I will ask the council to support the change from 1 month to 2. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I saw that post. I'm sorry, I've got feedback. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm getting feedback too, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Everybody else is muted.
So I also saw that post, and that is where I learned, one, a business owner listed the majority of the council that voted for that, and said we were not business friendly and encouraging people to remember to vote. I did follow up with staff to double check that there was no other information that our committee missed. And I understand that, as was presented to us, businesses were looking for relief as much as we could offer. And we had other discussions the week before about having businesses be able to open outside, including those with liquor licenses. So as a bigger picture, how to help the businesses that do serve food and alcohol. I did also follow up again with the Chair of Finance, Alderman Toledo, and I did not receive any information that would be compelling to say that we're in a position to change this recommendation. One thing I think is important to note is that we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. We're hoping, of course, at the end of the month, we'll move into the next phase and continue to move. But I just read today that Austin, Texas is locked down through August 15th. I hope we don't have to consider topics like this throughout the year, but I would not be surprised if we find ourselves convening to discuss other ways in which to help a number of businesses in case we have some more changes in our ability to be outside and to gather. So I did not learn anything in the last 2 weeks that was different than what we knew in our committee. So I stand by the recommendation and the vote for the report as it was approved. Thank you.
Alderman Mulliner.
Yes, I just would like to take this opportunity to thank Alderman Levin for getting the opportunity to hear a different point of view on this. I think it's an excellent move. I think that it's important for us to look at how much business these restaurants and bars have been able to do and understand that they basically have been out of operation for clearly 2 months and almost 3 months at this point. And I don't feel that from our end it's necessarily fair to require them to pay for a liquor license when they have not been able to really utilize that liquor license. So I appreciate this this motion, and we'll see if it moves forward. Thank you very much.
Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. I totally agree with Alderman Molnar. 2 weeks ago, I supported his motion. I support Alderman Levin's motion this evening. You know, these are challenging times. I do think that the city is friendly to businesses. It's, you know, they're extremely constrained. I think there is uncertainty, you know, as far as timing when we'll be into full swing. And even at that, I think the normal that we knew 4 months ago is going to be different. So therefore, I think 2 months is a reasonable, you know, give. I also like the language in here that talks about installments because cash flow is challenging for these businesses. So this will definitely get my support. And I ask the others on the council to support it as well.
Alderman Toledo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a couple of comments here. First off, like other aldermen, I feel the necessity to address and thank our business community and our residents for supporting our local businesses during this difficult time. I think it's safe to say, and I've heard other aldermen say it already, that our city council is anything but anti-business. In fact, we have had vocal and consistent groups of residents over the past years that claim that we are too friendly to businesses. This council has been supportive of businesses and their positive contribution to our tax base for many years. For example, when I was on the Development Planning and Zoning Committee, we changed our zoning ordinance to allow steel container boxes to be used for bars and restaurants to be creative with how they utilize those and create additional entertainment zones for their customers. We've also made a zoning change to allow liquor to be served earlier hours in the past. I think there was a ask that some soccer matches and football matches are at European time. And so we've made that concession. So those are just two, and we could go on and on about the various things that the council has supported to help these businesses and the business in particular that we are talking about tonight in terms of this liquor license credit. Also, specifically during the pandemic, the mayor and the city council have made many decisions to assist businesses during this uncertain time, and those things are still ongoing. I have a list of 17 different items. I won't read them all, but I will pick a couple. We've allowed outdoor beer gardens and patios to be covered with tents through November 30th. Allowed pickup windows, which would normally require a conditional use, to allow people to serve from their business and utilize their licenses. Allowed salons and other businesses that do not normally have outdoor cafes to apply for an outdoor cafe at no cost to expand their ability to social distance. We extended the carry-out liquor sales, waived the $100 outdoor cafe fee. Again, I could go on and on, but I think everyone gets the idea. So my first point is I felt it important to be clear about what this council has done to help our small businesses stay in business during these uncertain times, and also prior to that. As it relates to the decision tonight on whether to pass a 1 month or a 2 month credit for these license holders, I'm going to offer 3 points of consideration for my colleagues to consider, especially my colleagues who voted in support of the 2 month report 2 weeks ago, because there's new information that I want to make sure that you please consider. So first point is, I support the 1 month credit because I think it balances our financial priorities as it relates to our business community. You may or may not know that the category that we're talking about tonight, drinking and eating places, within our sales tax base accounts for 8.2% of our sales tax. I think that that's important to know because we're talking about giving financial consideration to a category of businesses that are important to our base, but do not represent the entire sum of our base, and certainly don't represent all of the businesses that are being impacted financially during this pandemic. It makes me a little uncomfortable to be overly generous with one category of businesses and not another. Secondly, it's important for me to consider balancing financial priorities as it relates to our residences and the property taxes that we will ultimately have to decide to levy at the end of this year. Many of you probably don't know, although it's been in front of the Finance Committee, we have received the pension fund contribution reports for this year, and they are not pretty. They are another large increase in actual dollars that we need to contribute to the pension funds this year. And that is going to make it difficult for us to balance the downward pressure of this pandemic and our financial resources in terms of diminishing revenues with our general fund and our ability to absorb the pension increases, all at the same time trying to respect our taxpayers who are also going through financial hardship and trying to keep our taxes reasonable for them at the end of the year. Finally, I think that this has a potential to set a bad precedent for our council. We had a committee process with an agenda posted, ample opportunity for public comment. We had a council process, which was also public, with ample opportunity for public comment. We made a vote as a council. Then there were arguments outside of the public process brought to certain individuals or posted on social media. And now we're entertaining a possible change to our council's decision. I think that that could set a bad precedent. So in summary, I think that a 1 month credit to these businesses and these license holders is a balance, a compromise, and it's a good option. And I hope that you will support the 1 month. Thank you.
Alderman Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I originally, at the last meeting, I heard both sides. I was interested in supporting our businesses, and I thought that the 2 month proposal had merit, but due to our financial constraints and that being kind of a middle of the road solution on that particular topic, and a lot of other things were offered as well. I thought that the give was generous enough in terms of bars and their liquor licensing and the financing of that. However, I've because these bars were not able to operate for over 2 months, they really didn't get use of their license for that period. So, rethinking it, if I wasn't able to drive my car for 2 months, I would hope to not have to pay the insurance for that. So, along that lines, I think given that they were closed for over 2 months, really with almost no revenue, I think it's warrant it to consider relaxing the license for about that amount of time. So I think the 2-month credit is reasonable and deserving at this point. So I would support the motion. Thanks.
I don't see anyone else. Is there anyone else who wants to, or who has their hand raised or wishes to speak? No? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Tamer to call the vote.
Leader,
Oh, hold on, stop. Sorry. I apologize. I should restate, just to be clear. This is on the motion to amend, so one of two things will happen. If this motion passes, then the ordinance will be amended. We'll have to vote again. If this motion fails, then we'll go to the underlying motion, which is the originally posted ordinance. So just to clarify, I'm going to ask Clerk Tamer to call the vote on the motion to amend, changing the ordinance from 1-month credit to 2-month credit. Clerk Tamer.
Leader,
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
Bram absent, Palumsky,
No.
Toludo,
No.
Park,
No.
Levin,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Honquist, absent, Brennan,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Deuter,
No.
6 ayes, 4 noes, 2 absent, 2 vacancies.
Okay, so we have a unique situation going on here. We have a couple of ordinances, we've got 2 vacancies. And we have a rule of 7 that we have, which is if there's a tie, the mayor will vote, and also if it has failed to achieve more than, up to 50% of elected officials. However, this is 6, not 7, so even if I voted, I'm happy to vote, Don. I don't think it'll change, not going to change, but I need to know, I'm going to ask the city attorney, according to our code, does the mayor have to vote in this instance? Or should I vote belt and suspenders? Up to you. I want to get clarification. If I'm not required to vote, I won't vote.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
You are not required to vote, as I interpret this. It is an amendment. It's going to need 8 votes when you call the next part of this.
So the amendment could fail, but you're saying that the ordinance would need 8 votes.
It would.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so as I thought, if it were 7 to 3, I'd be voting, correct? Okay. It's not 7 to 3, it's 6 to 4. So mayor does not vote on this, and based on roll call vote, the motion fails. So back to the original motion, which is to authorize a 1-month application for a 1 month.
Didn't it pass 6 to 4?
Sorry.
It passes.
Oh, hold on. So the amendment passed.
Yes, sir.
All right, let me clarify again. My mistake. Can the amendment be allowed to pass with a 6 to 4 vote, yes or no?
It can, but it'll fail.
Well, we don't know if it's going to fail yet, because some folks who, voted one way versus the other. The question is,
The amendment can
the question is a 6-4 vote adequate in our rules for a motion to amend? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
In my opinion, the answer is yes. The amendment has been successful.
Okay. I have a procedural question then, because I agree with you. Now, I'm allowed as chairman, and I think parliamentarian, as chairman, to ask questions. And I do have receipts from council that the amendment itself is allowed to pass. So I agree with you on that. The question I have is, if we do if now, technically, that answer's been had. The motion to amend has been approved by a majority, and now we have an amended ordinance before us. The question I have for the city attorney is, depending on how the vote goes, if the amended ordinance fails, then there's no change. The ordinance itself is wiped off the books, or at least not voted on, so it can't be implemented. I think that's the case, yes? There's certainly proper channels that council could go back to and look at this again, but this is one of those funky times where a report passed. We have a motion to amend an ordinance, which is allowed under our code. That has passed. Narrowly, I'll say, my words. And now it's before us again as amended. And if it passes, it passes. If it fails, none of the stuff that's listed in this ordinance goes forward. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I got you. I see you, Alderman Toledo. I appreciate the waving. The motion to amend has, we've determined that it's passed. So now before us is the revised ordinance. Continued discussion. I'm going to go to Alderman Toledo first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Understanding that the amended ordinance now would require 8 votes to get a change and some assistance to these license holders. And assuming that my colleagues that voted in the same fashion as I did on the amendment would stay with that decision and vote against the ordinance vote, procedurally, would I or another member of the council be allowed to amend the ordinance again back to its original to allow that to be voted on and possibly get some assistance to our businesses that are holding those licenses?
Let me see if I understand your question. We can motion to amend all day long. You can't add motions on top of amendments, but right now, this ordinance has been amended. The ordinance that we're voting on before us. So the question, are you asking, is it appropriate for you to make an amendment right now?
A motion to amend back to 1 month, the original ordinance, so that we could vote on that and possibly get.
I don't think, because it's specifically the exact motion to amend that we did, but I'm going to ask, I think I understand what you're asking, which is, can you amend it back?
I would rather give our businesses 1 month of credit than go back to the committee and start the process all over again and take another 4 to 6 weeks to get these businesses some support. Assuming we won't get 8 votes. I'm not saying that we will or we won't.
I understand, but the question is, okay, I guess, okay, so I understand your question. The question is, can you do a motion to amend to change it right back?
Yes, is that allowed?
Let me give me a second and ask you to mute so that. Alderman Park, I know you have your hand up. Give me a minute. We've already voted on it, Don.
After the ordinance had whichever way it goes.
You're right. You're right. Okay, so Don, I'm going to ask you to mute because I can hear myself twice, and that is horrible. Okay, so Alderman Toledo, I think what might be a proper way to achieve what you're looking to do is motion to reconsider, which is allowed. So
Point of order, Mayor.
Yes.
just so we don't get lost in it, I believe that a motion to reconsider would be proper by someone who was on the prevailing side,
Yes.
of which Alderman Toledo is not. So
No,
someone else
no,
could make the motion.
I understand.
All right.
Yeah, that was going to be my next statement. Motion to reconsider must be on the prevailing side. There might be another way to achieve this, and I'm going to ask the city attorney. So right now, the path that we have laid out is if Alderman Toledo made if anybody made a motion to amend, which is to reverse what we just did, right? I mean, that's what I heard Alderman Toledo ask was, can I change it back to 1 month? Right? Right? Yeah, so she's nodding her head. I think that we just voted on that. And I think just restating the opposite is redundant, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. I don't see how that,
Alderman Toledo here. I'm trying to think, I know that, and here's the part that I don't think I can do, but I'm going to ask Don anyway. I know that it is the chairman's authority where I can separate motions. Like if somebody motioned to paint the walls black and then turn on the lights, I could say, let's separate those two. Let's motion to paint the walls and turn on the lights. But in this case, this is an ordinance. I don't think I actually have the authority to separate what's in the ordinance.
to separate the pieces of the ordinance is what you're asking me.
Yeah, I don't think I have the authority to do that.
I guess you could take out, you could move forward with the two provisions that aren't in contest. I don't know that that achieves any of the goal of the council.
See, here's
and hold
the
and
challenge.
hold the other one.
Here's the challenge I have, city attorney. We're at an ordinance state right now. We're allowed to amend an ordinance. I don't think we're allowed to create two ordinances. Right?
No, correct. I agree with that.
So I don't think that my ability to separate this conversation is allowed. I also don't think that asking for, I don't think it would be in order for Alderman Toledo to just make a motion reversing exactly what was just done. So.
I agree with that.
So I'm going to, and yes, we certainly motion to reconsider is something that is allowed. We're talking parliamentary here. We're not talking about the motion. Motion to reconsider is something allowed, certainly by the prevailing side. Usually done when there's a failure, and then someone on the winning side of voting it down says, if you change it to this, and you get more votes. But I think everyone knows what I'm saying. I'm going to say that I hope, Alderman Toledo, that I've answered your question from a parliamentary standpoint. Yes?
On the prevailing side,
Go ahead, Don.
the prevailing side may end up being the side where the ordinance has not moved forward.
Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
Okay.
Alderman Toledo, you asked the question whether or not you can do another motion to amend reversing what we just voted on. It's the way I took your question. Do you have a different question, or have we answered your question?
Well, I think the answer, you've provided an answer. I think it comes across as it comes across a little gray, but I think we should just go ahead and vote then, because
Or we're going to continue conversation, in my opinion. So the way I took it, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, the way I took it is there was a motion to amend made by Alderman Levin and Alderman Mulliner. That motion to amend was to change it basically from 1 to 2. And I think that making another motion to amend, changing it back from 1 to 2 is not in order. And that's what I hear from City Attorney. I'm going to continue conversation. Alderman Mulliner has pulled out the giant book of, I haven't seen that book for 5 years. Alderman Mulliner is consulting with the city attorney. During this time, I'm going to entertain additional discussion. Alderman Levin, I'd ask you to mute your microphone. And I think Alderman Palomsky. Oh, okay. I just recognize Alderman Palomsky, then I'm going to go to Alderman Park after. Thank you for your patience. Alderman Park, Alderman Palomsky, the floor is yours.
I have a question, and thank you, Mayor. I wonder if we need to hear from the attorney. I'm curious to know if it's possible to make a motion to strike from the ordinance of the 4 components that we're recommending, the one that pertains to the amount of time for a credit, and then approve the ordinance as it is. And because there's been a report recommended to the council that has been approved, have on the agenda another ordinance that is speaking just to the amount of time. So meaning removing it and having the ordinance just include those 3 pieces.
So I understand what you're saying. I think your motion to remove that one piece would be in order. I don't think it would be in order. This is a result of a report, this ordinance. So to answer your question, I don't think it would be appropriate to strike something and then say we're going to do another. I think they have to go back to committee. Yeah.
I do know that there have been, like for in DP&Z, a report that's approved, but multiple ordinances come out of it. So, okay, thank you.
Okay. Alderman Deuter. Oh, I'm sorry, God. Alderman Park, I'm sorry, you're not on video. I can't see you waving furiously, but I know you are. I apologize. Alderman Park, the floor is yours, I promise.
That's okay, Mr. Mayor. It's a busy night and technical difficulties, and yeah, I apologize. I didn't want to wash my hair for you guys tonight, but another time I will. Promise. But my question is, just in terms of calculating, if the vote results in the same on voting for the one with the amendment, and it does not pass, does that mean like it doesn't go back to committee and there's no chance for the businesses to get anything? That's kind of the math of it that I'm trying to understand.
So this
Because
ordinance,
we've already voted on it, like, is it done?
No, well, to answer your question, the answer is if a motion, right now we have an amended ordinance in front of us. The motion to amend passed, so we have basically a new ordinance with 2 months of credit in it. If this ordinance fails, yes, the previous, the recommendation from the committee on the report and this ordinance fails, and there is no relief on the books as stated for these businesses. I anticipate if that happened, well, I shouldn't say that. We could certainly go back through the committee process and take another crack at it. But in this case, with how far down the road we are, if this amended ordinance, as amended right now, fails, then nothing happens as recommended by the report or the ordinance, and then it could go back to committee and through the process again. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Okay. Alderman Deuter, I think you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I very much appreciate Alderman Toledo's comments that she made earlier. I agree with everything she said, and I also just want to reiterate her last point, which is around our committee structure. We're in a conversation now where we've got, you know, every person here who wants to give relief to business, I'm sure. But we're in this position where we may ordinance, and we're in a position where no relief goes. So I think, you know, this is why we have committees. The committee had the discussion. They weighed all these various options. They moved forward a report that has a whole bunch of components in it that I think at this point no one wants to vote against. But there's one key issue that was recommended by the committee, and now we're thinking about whether or not to change that piece, and the whole set of recommendations could potentially fail. So I'd strongly urge someone who was on that prevailing side to make a motion to reconsider, so that we might which was, you know, a very balanced and generous
Alderman
amount
Deuter?
of support for those liquor license holders.
Alderman Deuter?
Yeah, yes.
You froze. You said I would strongly strongly urge the prevailing side, and then you froze. So I'm going to ask you to
Thank
repeat.
you. I've been seeing you all freeze periodically. It must be our service. To go back to what I would strongly urge someone on the prevailing side to make a motion to reconsider so that we could go back to potentially move forward the set of recommendations that the committee initially put forth. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Alderman Polomsky. You're already unmuted. Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Alderman Deuter, and I think Alderman Toledo made some excellent points. I just would like to reiterate that the committee vetted this. The only new information has been, that I'm aware of, restaurant owners contacting an alderman, which I appreciate, but we've not received anything different in our financial standing that would indicate that we should change what the majority was already. Thank you.
Alderman Levin.
Thank you. I'm not one who likes to move to change an ordinance. I feel exactly as other people have spoken that we vet things through the committee, and we tend to rely upon our committee's recommendations for the actions taken by the council. In this case, I was on the committee, and I felt that as a result of what the restaurant owners were saying was that they had spoken with staff about a 2 or 3 month extension, that they felt they would get 2 or 3 months, I shouldn't say extension, credit. And when it was presented to the committee, and I have the memo right here, it wasn't clear, and when I talked to city manager, I was told that, well, really 2 months was staff's recommendation. And when it came to committee, and I read the memo, it doesn't say staff is recommending 2 months. It said that it should be no more than 2 months. And then it said if it's 2 months, it would cost the city $34,000 in lost revenue. If it was 1 month, it'd be $17,000. And staff didn't say at the meeting, well, we're recommending 2 months. That was presented, to the best of my recollection, is, well, you could do 2 or 1 or none. It's completely up to you. But the feeling was among some of the restaurant owners that they had spoken with some staff people and that they were expecting something different. And they thought, from the ones I talked to, that it would move forward accordingly. Now, should they have written to the committee, participated? It's a little harder in the world of coronavirus. But it wasn't just because they talked to me and I changed my mind. It was because I felt things had gone on, and staff had a position that wasn't fully articulated to the committee. And if staff had said to the committee, here's the options, we're recommending 2 months, and of course we would always have the option to say 3 or 1 or none, I dare say that the committee probably would have said, sure, that seems reasonable, because what we're talking about here is a $17,000 difference. What we're talking about is not the same, and I understand that, and Alderman Toledo mentioned to me, and I think it's an important note, that there are other businesses who may have been closed entirely where the restaurants had some carryout. But the distinction of why I'm looking at this is because this is a fee that the liquor license holder is paying for the right to operate when they can't use that license. For instance, my Metro ticket was credited for a number of days when I gave it back, because although I paid for it, I couldn't really use it. So in this situation, I feel like things didn't quite go maybe the way they should have, because of the way it was brought before committee. And I also think that in any other circumstance, when we've had a vote for an amendment, I've never seen it threatened, and I can think of one exception in 10 years, which is unpleasant, I won't bring up, where the prevailing side was then threatened with, okay, well, we don't like this one amendment, so we're going to vote the whole thing down. An amendment is to fine-tune a piece of legislation. In this case, the amendment was brought, I believe, in good faith for a proper purpose. And so if we are going to throw the whole thing out for an amendment that changes it by $17,000, I think it's certainly proper. I don't think it's well advised. I also note that And, you know, we say, as aldermen, we go through the budget with a fine tooth comb. We look for every dollar we can save. I agree with that. But I also realize that we've got a very huge budget, $100 million budget, whatever it is, and we're talking about 17,000, and that price difference or that savings at the local liquor license holder's side can be very significant to them when they have been paying a lot of expenses and have had no income. And finally, I note that although they may only be 8% of our sales tax, and maybe city manager can give me a thumbs up or a thumb down, but I believe that the car dealers are maybe 50%, or some very large number. So they're going to be doing okay. They're not asking for our help, but the survival of our restaurants is key to our downtown, our Spring Road district, our Villette district, to keep them alive, to keep bringing people out to shop and to support all of the other businesses that are down there. So in these times, I think it's important to protect those businesses, and I hope we don't throw the whole thing out for $17,000. I guarantee you, if it went the other way, I'd still be voting in favor. Thank you.
City manager, and no one else has indicated. Anyone else, any additional questions or comments? Okay, so I'm going to call the vote, and just to be clear, this is on agenda item 6.13, which is an ordinance which has now been amended. So we're voting on final vote to pass ordinance. And the one thing that has changed because of the amendment is moving the 1 month credit to 2 months of credit eligibility. I hope that makes sense. I'm asking Clerk Tamer to call the vote. Thank you.
Leader?
I heard
him over there.
I heard an aye from the other room. I don't think I heard an aye here. Okay, so Assistant Manager Kopp has now brought Alderman. Okay. Alderman Lewis joined us via iPhone. I heard him vote aye. I'm going to ask Clerk Tamer, did you hear that? Oh. Okay.
Dunn?
Aye.
Graham?
Might not stay here or get him on the line. One of the two.
Polumsky?
Yeah, he didn't come through.
No.
There you go.
Toludo?
No.
Toludo?
No.
The whole grade has.
No.
She voted no.
Park?
Aye.
Levin?
Aye.
Can I ask one more question? Park, were you aye?
She was an aye.
Okay.
Yes,
Levin?
it was.
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Honquist? Absent. Brennan?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Deuter?
Aye.
8 ayes, 2 nays, 2 absent, and 2 vacancies.
8 ayes, 2 nays, motion carries. Agenda item 6.13 is approved. On to agenda item 6.18. This is a resolution. I'll ask Clerk Tamer to read the resolution.
A resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a professional services agreement between the City of Elmhurst and Metropolitan Family Services DuPage, Elmhurst Senior Services, FY 2020.
Okay, to put this, to put this before council, ask for a motion to approve the resolution as read. Motion by Alderman Polumsky, second by Alderman Levin. Alderman Polumsky, I think you pulled this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This was approved at our last meeting, but I noted that this resolution does not have a dollar amount in it, and I'd like to ask that we, it's a Scrivener's error. Just like to make a motion to amend.
Give me 1 second. It's truly a Scrivener's error. We can amend it.
Okay.
We can do both.
You could do it either way. You could correct the Scrivener's error and approve it, or amend it if that made you more comfortable.
Where is it, by the way?
It's on a separate sheet, which isn't attached.
Okay, so it's
Go ahead.
it's available, but it's not in this resolution. We know that it's in the report. I just don't see it anywhere here. So I wanted to make sure for the public to know that we are approving this dollar amount in this resolution.
What's the dollar amount?
$67,000.
Is there an easy place to insert it? Or, so just announcing it publicly, no?
There is a place to insert it, and we will insert it.
So
This resolution shall take effect. All at once, you want to direct me what I want to
well, that, I had it up over here and now it's not open. I will find it. But I just want to see if it would be adequate to make a motion to amend to include it where appropriate.
This is for the exhibit, not the resolution. Compensation. Okay. Sorry, I was looking at the ordinance, the resolution itself. So under for compensation, is that what we're looking at down?
Say that again.
Yep, point number 4, exactly.
Elmhurst shall compensate the paid provider in accordance with the rate and charge schedule designated the scope of services to this agreement. Consistent with the local government economy, yada, yada, yada. Providers shall invoice Elmhurst on a monthly basis.
The scope of services has a blank in it. It's an attachment, but I don't think it's attached on my board docs. So
For compensation, what we're talking.
it's 67,000. It was just a Scrivener's error not to have included it in the scope of services.
But it is technically compensation.
But we can, of course, that is the compensation we can attach.
And how much is it?
67,000.
$67,000.
So can we make an amendment under compensation, add a sentence that says the amount is $67,000?
Yeah.
All at once, you okay with that?
Yes.
So all at once, you want to amend, under,
Scope of services.
no, under exhibit A,
Okay.
I put it under compensation.
Okay.
I don't care where you put it.
Okay. I don't care either.
I just want, is the statement, is a motion to add, the amount is $67,000.
Perfect. Yes.
After the last line of compensation. Do I have a second? 11 with a second. Okay. We have a motion to amend agenda item 6.18 and add in the compensation portion of the exhibit, the amount is $67,000. Any discussion? Clerk Tamer, ask you to call the vote on the motion to amend. So I do my copy running in here anymore?
No, tried it again.
Alderman Leader,
Aye.
There you go.
Dunn,
Aye.
Graham absent, Palumski,
Aye.
Chaluto,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Levin,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Conquest absent, Brennan,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Deuter,
Aye.
10 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent, 2 vacancies.
10 ayes, 0 nays, motion to amend the resolution passes. On to the amended resolution. Any further discussion? I ask Clerk Tamer to call the vote on the amended resolution.
Leader,
Aye.
Dunn,
Aye.
Graham absent, Palumski,
Aye.
Chaluto,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Levin,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Conquest absent, Brennan,
Aye.
Mulliner,
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
10 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent, 2 vacancies.
10 ayes, 0 nays, motion is approved. Agenda item 6.18 is approved. On to agenda item 7, reports and recommendations. Mayor Morley, that's me. Couple of things. First and foremost, I want to apologize to all for the late start of this meeting. We had an hour executive session scheduled, and we got started 23 minutes late due to technical issues, but I'm happy to say that we ironed them out. We did have a lot of stuff that needed to be covered, and I thought it was important to run a little bit late and do our duties and do our job. So I apologize for the late start, but it was necessary. As a result, this meeting's running a little longer, but that's okay. I want to remind all who are watching, possibly listening, that we are still in phase 3 of the Governor's Restore Illinois plan. Phase 3 of the Governor's Restore Illinois plan. We are still in the recovery phase. It allows for, and I encourage everyone to read the Restore Illinois plan online. Search for it. You can find it. It's pretty specific. Among other things, this allows for restaurants in non-essential retail to open up in a very limited capacity. I'm happy to say that our restaurants and retail have opened up to the extent they could. We are trying to work with all of our restaurants and retail locations. If they do good, we do good, and I think we all want to see Elmhurst get back to some sort of semblance of normal. But that said, we are still in phase 3, and I would ask that all still do their best to follow the healthcare providers' recommendations and the governor's order as it pertains to phase 3. Phase 4, which opens up for significant, opens up our communities significantly more. Right now, according to the governor, he projects that we will open on the 26th of this month, but that's not everybody. It depends on what region you're in and if you meet the metrics. Phase 4 allows for gatherings of over 50 people, which means that we possibly could have a in-person full city council. Also allows for greater reopenings of restaurants, bars, resumes travel, childcare, schools reopen under the guidance of IDPH, among other things. That's phase 4. We have not entered phase 4, and it really depends on what region you are in. We are still in the Northeast region as designated by the governor. So I would encourage you to stay educated, but please get out there and support our local businesses as you're able to do so. Agenda item 2 on my list here is over the past several weeks, we have had several peaceful protests in the city of Elmhurst. I'm very proud to see members of our community exercising their First Amendment rights and doing so in a peaceful manner. I know a lot of some of our younger citizens have been the ones driving this, and I think it's fantastic. I truly appreciate what they're doing. Most recently, we had a car parade for those who had concerns about exposure, and then we had a much larger gathering at Wilder Park this weekend where over 800 folks attended. I know that there was some guests from out of town, but also the majority, I believe, were Elmhurst residents. So again, I'm proud of Elmhurst, and I appreciate them exercising their First Amendment rights. In addition, over this past several weeks, we have received many questions, not only from residents, but also aldermen pertaining to our police department and our training and our policies. I think certainly it's everybody's right to ask these questions, and there's been good questions. We're a little bit limited, as I mentioned, as we're still in phase 3, hopefully heading to phase 4 sooner than later. But I've been working with Chief Ruth and City Manager Grabowski, and we're going to be setting up a public forum where the public can attend, ask questions, get a better understanding of our police force, how they're trained, and how we enforce our policies. As I said, that's in the works. Stay tuned. We want to make that as successful as possible. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Oops. Just a few items. Likewise, I want to thank all the staff who made that possible to have safe protests in town, because that's what we're here for, is to provide that opportunity. Second, I met with our ComEd rep today via phone to go over our annual report. And the good news is that reliability has gone up again. Last year we had a little glitch, but we're back down on the numbers. And once we are able to have her to a meeting, she's anxious to come out and present that to the City Council. We also talked about additional tree trimming, circuit work, all the things that we discuss each year. And then the last item is on June 25th, we will host a community blood drive here at City Hall. We have tried to, or not tried, we have been working with all of our fellow governmental agencies in town or anybody who hosts blood drives to see that we can get one on an average of once a month. And with limited access to buildings, we have decided to open City Hall to that with our protocols that we have in place. It makes it a good opportunity for the community to be able to come out and donate blood, which is always needed. That's what I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other reports from the dais? Alderman Levin.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to supplement the comments made by yourself and City Manager. I don't usually speak on general topics, and I probably would have liked to get a haircut before I came in and did it, but here we are. I wanted to note that we've gone through some difficult times over the past few months, starting out with the coronavirus, and then most recently, the civil rights issues related to the death of George Floyd, which unfortunately is another example of a killing, a police misconduct related case. And obviously, we don't weigh in on all of them, but this one's similar to Laquan McDonald, is one where you can look at it, and whether you're a police officer or a civilian, you can easily identify that something's gone wrong. And the situation with George Floyd caused mass protests throughout the United States, which also led to looting. Now, I usually don't bring up what I consider mostly state or national issues before the council. We really try to concentrate on providing essential services for our residents and taking care of problems which we're faced with more in the city of Elmhurst. The issue came before the city council because we were concerned of the protests turning violent or resulting in property damage. And so we took appropriate action, and I certainly stand by the fact that we need to protect our residents and our businesses, which are an important part of our community. And what I'm saying is my statement, my feeling that I wanted to put forth, that doesn't necessarily call for any council action. We did have a couple of protests here in Elmhurst. I attended both. The first one on June 2nd, which was the original planned date for the one that later happened in Wilder Park. And that one, our own local one, was changed when organizers worked constructively with our city staff, including our police department. Then it was canceled again until last Saturday. The actual protest on June 2nd, I saw it was small compared to the Wilder Park one. It was productive. It was people trying to get their message out and call attention to the Black Lives Matter issue. The June 13th issue was actually, and I would say I was impressed by the size. It could have been 800. I thought it might be 1,000. There was a 30-minute march from Wilder Park around St. Charles Road and back, which was very peaceful. It was intended to be, the organizers that I saw were all local, at least the ones that were speaking. And many of the speakers were local. So these are people from Elmhurst. And the chant to start out with was, "We are Elmhurst, this is a peaceful protest," and that set the tone. There were some very impressive speeches given. There was and I wish I had the names, but my retention ability for names is not too great. There was a young woman, I believe going to be a sophomore or was a sophomore at York, who spoke with wisdom and poise beyond her years. There was a woman from North Elmhurst who spoke as a mother and concerned about schools, who was a powerful speaker about some of the issues. And they both spoke about the issues they face in Elmhurst as Black residents. But as I say, this was an Elmhurst event, so it was important to hear what our residents were saying. There was a lot to be learned at that event. It was educational. It wasn't necessarily a fight between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter. I mean, I'll say to you, Black lives do matter. And one of the things I learned, and probably already knew, was that 10% of our population in Elmhurst are people of color, and only 2% of our residents are Black residents. But these are our neighbors who might experience prejudicial treatment or have concerns that are unique to them. And because they are our residents, that we as a city need to be sensitive to what they are saying to us. We should appreciate that we had in our city a well-organized forum that was not intended to incite, but to educate and make us aware. Now, for those of you who have known me, my perspective on things is shaped. I was a student of law enforcement and criminal justice from the time I was a graduate student. I worked for the state for 10 years. I was the deputy director of our state criminal justice authority. My father was a police officer. So that brings a perspective and appreciation for the policing that we provide in this city. And while a lot of people look at reasons to move to Elmhurst, they talk about the schools and the parks. And I looked at that, and I also looked at how well Elmhurst Police Department was rated 20 years ago when I moved here. It was highly rated, and the chief of Elmhurst was then the chief of the Chiefs of Police Association, Illinois. The resident from the north side of Elmhurst said, referring to the George Floyd situation, that could have been my son. And it could have been her son elsewhere. And I hope and I believe that that wouldn't happen in Elmhurst. I believe our officers are well educated and well trained, and they know the bounds within which they must operate. And like our slogan says, providing the best, and I believe we do. I'm not saying nothing bad could happen in Elmhurst, but I can honestly say that if it did happen, we as a council would react. There's no place for such misconduct in our town. I'm proud of our police department. We're well served by officers, and the idea of defunding it in any way is not something I would support. I also note that we as a city, including the mayor and our police department, took precautions to protect our business and property. We worked with the organizers. We made Wilder Park a safe place. And I saw many, many residents, assumedly, but people walking, stopping to thank the police officers who were securing or blocking off the perimeter, to thank them for what they were doing. If residents feel they've been subject to racial discrimination by this city, then they should tell us, the city manager, the mayor, a department head, whoever's involved, or their elected officials. So in conclusion, there's 2 points I want to make. I want to thank the protesters and the organizers for being so constructive and providing so much information and calling attention to something important. I heard what you said. I may not agree with everything, but I understand it. I'm not in favor of defunding the police. We have to be educated and sensitive to people in our city, whether they're 2% or 90%. We serve and protect all of our residents, including the minority population. And yes, Black Lives Matter. We got the message. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to speak during other business, but I would like to speak now. It seems to fit in line with some of the discussion during the segment. I first want to thank the organizers of Saturday's event, the peaceful protest. I also want to thank Elmhurst Police Department, Public Works, and the Park District for facilitating the opportunity for uninterrupted demonstration. I attended on Saturday, and I listened and expressed my support for our neighbors who are forgotten, excluded, or subjected to unfair treatment because of race. I heard a number of opinions and calls to action, and I want to try to touch on how a few of those do translate to the local level within the framework that is the City of Elmhurst. First, the need for empathy and education within the community. On Monday, June 8th, the City of Elmhurst Commission on Youth opened discussions about adding programming focused on racism and cultural competency, seeking input and ideas from young people of color on how to proceed, and planning events that help educate the community. Clerk Jackie Tamer is the chair of this commission, and I also serve on it. I invite everyone with suggestions to please contact Jackie or me, or to attend the next meeting, which is July 13th at 12:30 at City Hall. On Saturday at Wilder, one of the speakers discussed how in school she learned about the history of Elmhurst with the starting point of the arrival of its settlers, excluding any history about Native Americans. I hadn't given that much thought before, and I appreciate the enlightenment. I contacted Elmhurst History Museum Director Dave Oberg, the museum's part of the city, to ask about the possibility of expanding our local history exhibit to include the history of Native people who once lived on this land. I learned that Director Oberg and museum curator Dan Lund were not only at the event, but they had been working on an exhibit for winter and spring of 2022. It will, and I'm using a quote here from Director Oberg, it will look not only at the Potawatomi people, but the other First Nations people who call this area home, dating back to prehistoric times. The show has a long lead time as it is critical to engage and work with the First Nations people in storyboarding the show and creating good supporting programs. We're fortunate that Dan's years at Beloit College's Logan Museum of Anthropology put him in touch with many of the people who will serve as resources on this particular exhibit. And by the way, if I hadn't asked Director Oberg about this, I would not have learned and known that First Nations people is a better term than Native Americans. I'm continuing to learn here myself. Elmhurst Public Library is hosting a social justice learning group for the purpose of discussing issues of social justice both locally and nationally, and to learn more about issues of race, gender, education, poverty, and other topics by reading books and articles, listening to podcasts, or watching films, then discussing together in a respectful manner. In July, the group will be discussing What If I Say the Wrong Thing by Verna Myers. The registration link is on the library site. I know I have a lot more to learn and I've signed up, but I'm on the wait list. Stay tuned for possible additional opportunities. Second, I'd like to respond to some of the comments and chants about the police. I do contend that if we as a nation prioritized education and healthcare, including mental health services, the result would be decreased reliance on police. I also recognize that at the local level, neither the city nor the police department have jurisdiction over funding for schools or healthcare. That said, you may have noticed tonight with our discussion that the City Council approved funding for Metropolitan Family Services. This resource is necessary for the hundreds of Elmhurst residents they assist each year. I encourage everyone interested to learn more about the Elmhurst Police Department. My discussions with Chief Ruth over the last couple of weeks have only reassured me, and we have talked about how Elmhurst officers engage with community members. We've talked about the budget, and I'm pleased to hear. I understand there will be more information coming, as Mayor Morley touched on. But for anybody who wants to take a look at the budget, you can find it a few places on our website. The best place to find a comprehensive listing of it is from the 2020 proposed budget, page 24. So I also have faith in our police, and I would expect that if there is a mistake, if there is something that has happened that should not have, that residents would come to us, would come to the city manager, and it would be handled appropriately and professionally. And I was pleased with the presence on Saturday, which brings me to the third piece that I'd like to address, which is the police involvement for Saturday. So Wilder Park set aside, or the Park District set aside Wilder Park, or identified it as a place for demonstrators to gather. IC, St. Peter's, and Elmhurst College made their parking lots available, and the city posted this availability and other updates about the event. As with the Turkey Trot and the Elmhurst Cycling Classic, police blocked off the streets. But one difference about this event is that we couldn't predict the turnout. I realize some people were inconvenienced, but knowing that police did assist drivers to destinations when necessary, even when blocked off, and that people could freely demonstrate and that the community was safe, I would call it a success, and I thank the police. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Jim, anybody raising their hand? On to other business. Any other business? Anybody raising their hand? No other business. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Alderman Mulliner, second by Alderman Levin. Clerk Moran.
Leader?
Aye.
Dunn?
Aye.
Graham absent. Palumski?
Aye.
Toledo?
Aye.
Park?
Aye.
Levin?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Conquest absent. Brennan?
Aye.
Mulliner?
Aye.
Deuter? Deuter?
Oh.
Okay. Aye. 10 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent, 2 vacancies.
10 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Thank you, everybody, for your time and your patience. Bye.